green. Oh, yeah.
I'm going to test the sound, maybe see if she's hearing us out back. Flo, can you hear me okay? Are we ready to go? Test the sound, maybe see if she's hearing us out back.
All right, council and the public, let's call to order the special council
Recording in
meeting
progress.
here on, council and the public, let's call to order the special council
Recording in
meeting
progress.
here on, this is a new one. I'll keep talking to myself. Here we are, Wednesday, September 6th, 6:30 PM. We're here to discuss the wharf project. Here we are, Wednesday, September 6th, 6:30 PM. We're here to discuss the wharf project. Here we are, Wednesday. Well, I like the sound of my voice, so, hi, Brad. Well, I like the sound of my voice, so, hi, Brad. For members of the public that are viewing this online, you may not be aware, but we have an echo on everything I say right now. For members of the public that are viewing this online, you may not be aware, but we have an echo on everything I say right now.
I'm so glad you're sat on your watch.
So, you have, I better check what you have.
Stay with us.
For your Zoom, where's your Zoom settings?
Okay.
Hold on, I better, so, click this right here, go to audio setting, or, okay, that's fine. Yes, that's fine. Okay, give me 30 seconds to get set in, I'm done.
This is okay to keep down. TV volume's not involved in any of this, right? That's what happens when he leaves without giving us a turn before he leaves. I'll have to run the next couple of meetings.
All right, let's try this again. This is the special council meeting for the town of St. Andrews on Wednesday, September 6th, 6:30 p.m. We are here today to discuss the wharf project. For those that are not in attendance, this is being aired through Zoom and Facebook. If anyone has any questions this evening, I don't think the PNOPper will work. How about cspear@townofstandrews.ca? And maybe if we're streaming online, someone would be nice enough to put Chris Spear's emails in the comments if that's at all possible. So again, that is cspear, SPEAR, at townofstandrews.ca. Let's get into the recording of attendance. I note that we do have a couple absentees tonight. We've got Councillor, is anyone online, first of all, Mr. Spear? I don't believe so. Councillor Blanchard and Councillor Gumashel. So I think right now those are our two members of council that are not in attendance. Thank you, council, for being here. I know you had a long session last night, and the fact that you're back at the table again tonight means a lot. So thank you. And I do want to recognize that we're on the unceded traditional territory of the Beskoto Mugati people. Approval of agenda, it is really the one subject as discussed. There's a presentation and then a discussion, but it is around the Market Wharf. I'll be looking for someone to move to approve the agenda for the special meeting. I've got Councillor Harland and seconded by Councillor Heenan. Any changes to the agenda? All in favor of this agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. That has been approved. Disclosure of conflict of interest. Not seeing any. So we are going to get into the presentation to kick off today's meeting. We're fortunate to have members of CBCL Limited present for the Market Wharf Approach construction options. Want to welcome Corey McPherson and Dave Morgan. Thank you for being here. I'll ask you to come up to the podium just so the people at home can hear you through the microphone. And once again, thank you for being here and look forward to seeing your presentation.
All right, perfect. All right. Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'm Corey McPherson from CBCL Limited. I'm a senior structural marine engineer, and just going to talk today about the Market Square project. A little background: the existing approach trestle timber structures exceeded its anticipated design life. Town of St. Andrews initially proposed revitalization of the Market Square, including demolition of the approach structure and raising the Market Square to account for climate change, sea level rise. CBCL was retained to complete a geotechnical program and complete the concept design options. And what we have for you today are the options that we investigated. They are partial infill and repair of the existing approach structure, an approach berm, a new steel pile concrete wharf structure, and precast concrete caissons and girders. And the final one is kind of a hybrid, a partial infill and a steel pipe pile wharf. So the next slide. First slide shows the rehabilitation option. So essentially Market Square will be brought up to the new elevation and infilled as per the original plan. We're proposing to demo the first 15 bents of the approach span and existing timber crib. And what we plan on doing is providing a transitional timber crib, that'll just provide transition between the elevation of the Market Square to the existing height of the approach span. And from that point, we are going to do repairs such as the removal and replacement of the ballast boxes, some deck repairs on the composite timber decking, repairs to removal and replacement of 25 piles between grid lines 15 and 32. And yes, and I already said the timber crib structure will transition from the higher elevation to the existing elevation. So with this, the lifespan isn't as long as the other options. Any timbers that we're repairing, you can expect a 25-year lifespan. Any remaining timbers will give plus or minus 10 years, could be shorter than that based on, well, doing continual investigations of the wharf. With this as well, like your existing approach span will remain as it is, so the higher elevation isn't achieved in this option. But there's potential for access to the intermediate trestle, and pier head during construction. There might be short timelines where it'd be shut down by the contractor, but we believe there's potential for limited access during those repairs. The cost, yes, so we estimated the cost to be 5.3 million, give or take, 5.367 million, sorry. And this includes all the raised infill for Market Square, modifications to timber bracing on the intermediate trestle, sorry, pile wrap repairs, and, oh, yeah, I already covered that, sorry. Yeah, and the pile wrap repairs. We've estimated a construction schedule for this one of 21 months, with the design period taking 7 months and construction taking 14 months. The reason for the long schedule is the working with the tides and ripping out the timbers, and just the limited amount of time you have to work in the tidal zone there, so. Yep, sure.
For clarification, councils, I see they have May 2023 to July 2024. That would probably be May 2020.
Yes, sorry, that is
May 2020.
24 to 25, sorry, that's what it should be. My apologies. Yeah, May 2024 to July 2025. All right, the second option is, again, extending
Sorry to
or-
interrupt. Do you mind if, I know we could wait till the end, but I think probably option by option, it might be good to ask questions versus jump back and forth. And again, we can get into the general specifics after. I guess my first question would be is, why would we commence a project in May for 14 months and then potentially lose 2 summers at the wharf versus commence it? Is it because we have to commence it then, or?
Well, no, we
if we
just
commenced
put,
it in January, you know what I mean? Would it be
Yeah.
the difference of losing 1 summer versus 1.5 if that was to happen?
yeah, exactly. We just put, for a timeline standpoint here, we used October, if we started detailed design in October, and we just carried on from there. But yeah, if you phase it, you can plan to do some of the work, or most of the work outside of the tourist season, but there's some work that will have to be done in the tourist season, in those summer months, such as any kind of concrete. You can, like March, April, you can start looking at doing concrete in September, October, but once you start getting into the colder months, it gets a little bit more difficult. So yes, these schedules here, we just kind of picked a date, but they can be spread over multiple seasons if that is the case.
Well,
Sorry, Councillor Ware. I'll go to you, Mr. Spear, in a second. Councillor Ware?
I noticed you've mentioned pile wrap repairs. Do you intend to use wrap or jackets with grout on the inside of the jacket?
Well, just the corrosion protection of the pile wrap system. I'm not exactly sure what was proposed before.
it's
but-
really more, they're calling it a wrap, but it's really a liquid, almost like a paint, if you will. So it's for everything above the splash zone. So we do have anodes below the splash zone, but they don't protect anything that's not underwater. So it's a coating that goes on the steel piles above the high water mark.
Well, I was just wondering, there's also the system of putting a jacket on and then about 3 inches of
Yeah,
grout
there's
the whole way around.
There's a couple different systems. One is you can actually grout it. You can form it off and grout it in and protect it. Another one is there's actually a fiber wrap
Yep.
that you can wrap around. Usually see them in circular piles. They inject a resin, put it on, tighten it, and protects it for certain splash zone there, so.
But just to go back, Corey, sorry.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I guess, so council, I guess for the construction period, that's just to use round ones, is October 24th probably to the end of December 25. So potentially completely losing the summer of 2025. Corey had said it can be done in phases, but I think somewhere like the end work can be done in phases, but once you start the approach work, I think that has to be just started and finished. You
The
can't do like
infilling,
yeah,
the infilling has to be done, infilling in timber crib has to be done immediately to bridge that gap there. But then some of the repairs on the approach span or approach trestle may be phased or done in the summer months, but not affecting things too much, right? But again, that does come down to the contractor at the end of the day, and what holdups they'd have there, right? So.
Sorry, I got a little confused, I was talking the infill. But the other thing to realize too, council, that part of our funding was related to climate change, and I don't think this raises it. And so if I'm.
It only raises Market Square and a small portion
Yeah,
to access
so
the
there's-
approach trestle.
We'd have to get approval from our funding partners whether or not that'd be sufficient, because original plans was to raise the approach by 1/2 a meter. In fact,
Yeah.
Thank you. We can jump ahead to the next one. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions at the end.
Sure. So the second option investigated was just providing a rock infill berm approach all the way to the existing intermediate trestle. So this work would be done along with the Market Square infill, the elevation be raised, the 1/2 a meter for the climate change. Abutment would be placed at the end of the rock fill to provide a transition to the existing intermediate trestle, as it's at a 1/2 a meter lower elevation. We'll have a couple, yeah, so that's a section through the center of it on the approach span. So as you can see, rock fill, imported fill, and armor stone along the sides, and paved surfaces. So, yeah, so essentially it'd be the removal of the entire approach structure. As I said, the raised infill in Market Square and the approach berm, new abutment. The anticipated design life of this one would be a 50-year design life. Doesn't provide the aesthetics of the timber wharf or the wharf structures. And it limits ability to utilize floating wharf structures, but as I understand, they're not really used too much on the approach span. So that might not be too bad of a thing. So the price on this one, we estimated to be $6,057,000. And again, that includes the rock infill, modifications, timber bracing, the intermediate trestle, and pile wraps. All the options will include the raised Market Square infill and modifications to the bracing and pile wraps. So this one is estimated being 12 months for the overall structure. Design, permitting, tender, and award would be 6 months. Most of that more so concentrated on the permitting aspect of it. And construction is 6 months. So again, it shows March to September, but we feel like this could be done outside of those dates. So, and we believe that it can be started and completed in an off-door season.
Sorry,
Yep.
I don't mean to interrupt, Corey.
Yep,
The only other thing,
fine.
council, that with this, on the wharf on the current approach, there's a timber crib there that some of the boats rest on to do work and stuff, and that's going to be lost or have to be relocated under that. And that was one of the initial concerns from the boating community, was the loss of this crib that's, I don't know, about a quarter of the way down the wharf on the left-hand side.
Okay, I should just note too that all these options also provide infill in front of the retaining wall. If you go to the next slide there. In front of these, I know people at home probably can't see, but in front of this area, to brace that retaining wall there. All these options include that as well. I didn't specify that earlier. Third option that we looked at was just providing a new approach wharf structure. It'd be a steel pile-supported, cast-in-place deck. This won't be as long as the initial approach structure, or the existing approach structure, sorry. It'd be 82-meter long, and as I said, it would consist of steel pipe piles. Some of them battered for lateral loads, and some of them will have to be rock socketed because of that. Again, this will be raised to the same elevation as the Market Square infill, so that we meet the climate change sea level rise. And then we provide a transition structure from the end of that wharf down to the existing intermediate trestle so that we can transition smoothly. A couple things on this one. Transition spans, we can be designed for additional weight, just in, for future if we want to raise other wharves up or do some modifications. This has anticipated design life of 50 years. We'll also have timber sheathing and timber fender piles on the side of it, so that provides the aesthetic look of the timber wharf. Now, with this option, we believe that, well, I'll talk about it, I guess, in the schedule here next. So this option is estimated at 8.2 million, with including Market Square, et cetera. Estimated design construction schedule is 18 months, with design, permitting, tender award 6 months, and the construction season being the full 12 months. With the construction season, with cast-in-place concrete, you have to do that concreting in warmer weather, so there's a fair amount of it here. So, as we said, we expect a minimum of 1 season would be lost in this option. And we added additional time to, again, we just put these dates in there as placeholders, and we added another additional time on there just for that cold weather concreting.
And council, sorry,
Yep, no.
I should have put in we had the conceptual drawings, which you've had in previous reports. This is the one that look like small pillars that are holding up almost like a bridge structure. It's concrete on concrete, but it has to be cast in place, meaning the concrete's actually poured
Yeah.
live here as opposed to being brought in and, already assembled and just lifted into place.
There are some flexibilities with some of these pile structures where you can put precast panels down as a deck, but you'd still need a topping slab, so you're still into cast-in-place concrete, which kind of, in the next option, something similar to what I'm talking about. I guess, is there any questions on option 3? All right, the fourth option we looked at is a precast concrete caissons, precast, pre-stressed bridge girders. So essentially, this is a block and span type structure where we'd have precast caisson units brought in. Their weights would be low enough that they can haul them on the roads. You'd prepare mattresses underneath them and stack them and fill them with ballast, similar to a timber crib structure, only with concrete and in sections. And then the top of the deck would consist of double T precast neck girders. They're typically used in bridge designs. We've used them once in a cruise ship design, cruise ship berth design, where we utilize the neck beams supported on pile structures. So with this option, you'd have to land the neck girders onto these precast caissons, and you'd have a topping slab poured over top of them. So again, this would consist of the removal of the entire approach structure, and will be placed with this block and span structure that is 82 meters long, same as the pile structure. Wharf elevations could be matching the Market Square infill for climate change sea level rise, and its anticipated design life is 50 years. We could also include timber fender piles and sheathing into this one to get that aesthetic look of a timber wharf. I just noted in the slideshow here that they can, to save on cost, they can be removed from the design but added in at a later date if needed. A couple things with this, a little bit more uncertainty with the cost, crane requirements. We have some crane costs that we use in our estimate, but it's a fair size crane that we need to bring in here. So the variability in cost of renting the crane, it's quite variable. The stacked precast concrete units are not common for piers of marine structures. We've seen them stacked as retaining structures. They're not common for pier structures. They can be used for that, but I may pose some difficulties when setting them, some learning curves setting them on the mattresses. So this option here, close to the piled option, again, 7.884 million with everything included. And we have the same estimated construction schedule. Although they can precast the concrete and in a plant and bring it to site, there still is topping slabs and more concrete that has to be poured between the next beams to form the whole structure. So again, for this option, we're looking at 1 season being missed on the wharf. And the fifth option, if there's no questions on option 4, the fifth option is the hybrid between the steel pipe pile and the infill berm. So what we're proposing is that we cut down the steel pipe pile wharf that we proposed in option 3 down to 40 meters and make up the difference with an approach berm. In this option, we've extended the plan view of Market Square out more than the other options to allow for more, for room for shops on there. We can modify that as needed in detailed design if we were to go to this one. But essentially consists of the same type of construction as the previous options with steel pipe pile, some of them rock socketed in, timber fender piles and sheathing on the outside for that aesthetic look. Has a 50-year design life. And as I said, the cost could be reduced a bit with Market Square infill. So for this option, we are proposing, or we estimated around 7.8 million, including the upgrades and expansion of the Market Square area. Estimated construction schedule is 13 months, with 6 months for design, permitting, tender. All of them are pretty much the same just because of the permitting period. And construction 7 months. So we feel that there's a potential to complete the construction of this one outside of a tourist season, if scheduled in September there, if the construction started right in September. So you'd get your piles driven and your pile caps poured, and then you'd pour the deck in March, April when the weather warmed up again. And the last slide I have on here is just kind of a comparison of all the options that we presented, and with it, I have a couple asterisks beside a couple of them. The single asterisk is just showing that it doesn't meet the elevation for this climate change sea level rise. That's the rehabilitation of the existing approach span. And the one with the 2 asterisks beside it are the ones that we feel can be completed outside of a tourist season. Be completed, yeah. Wouldn't have to take away from any of the tourist season. So that's my presentation. Sorry for stumbling through some of it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Council, any questions? Okay, Councillor Heenan.
Well, if I was to narrow it down, Council and Your Worship, I wouldn't think that we would do number 1 because it doesn't meet the environmental change. It doesn't raise the elevation. So, in my opinion, option number 1 would not be to be looked at. That would just be my opinion. I mean, I'm no, once again, like last night, I'm no engineer, but I do know that if we're going to spend money, we have to have something in order to address climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. Any other member of council? All right, the good news about all this, council, is because CBCL is our partner at any given time, should a question surface, is we go back and forth. Mr. Spear's in touch with them regularly. There's a lot of questions. I know that the public presentation is scheduled. Is that correct, Mr. Spear? Is the CBCL is doing also a kind of a public presentation in addition, are they?
I guess this was about it, Your Worship. We can do,
Okay.
they'll do whatever we ask. So it's whatever next steps, well,
So
to a certain extent.
I guess
As he starts breaking into
I
tears.
guess
but-
I guess my question is on that is these options, and there's more than what we had last time. So they haven't been taken out to the public for opinion right now, and we might all have opinions, but they haven't been properly vetted. So I guess my question is what does that process look like for the public? Because when you're making a decision, whether it be $5.4 million, which again I get your comments, Councillor Heenan, especially for something that could need another well, not 5 million, but it need another few $1 million in 8 years. It's pretty concerning. But then when you have a decision that's 8.2 million and involves maybe shutting down the wharf for an entire year, that needs to be vetted as well, right? So I guess where does that leave us for next steps on public consultation?
Well, Your Worship, I guess one thing is all these things have been presented to the public, although it's been over a span of about 1.5 to 2 years. I get that, but they all have been. We had several presentations, maybe just after the pandemic on these. Nonetheless, what maybe I would suggest is that we do some stakeholder engagements initially. And so for the wharf users, being both the commercial and the pleasure boaters, just to kind of get theirs feeling on the seasonal. And then if council wants, and then we could talk to maybe at a BIA meeting about the tourism aspect. And because in addition to the loss of the wharf, there's going to be traffic, obviously trucks and stuff running up and down the streets through the summer for some of these proposals. And we can go to a, really the next step is just we have the conceptual drawings done. If you want to do one more public presentation where we bring in the conceptual drawings and kind of have an open house concept where, it's from from my understanding of where it is, it's really aesthetics is important, the timing of the season is important, and cost is important. So you get a three-pronged scale, if you will, and you're trying to balance them out, which takes the importance of all of them. And we just need input from the community. And I think for those affected the direct most, it'd be nice to have them in a more quiet surrounding than having the whole community. But then maybe between now and maybe the second week of October, we'll have those engagements with stakeholders, whether or not you want to do it in a council of the whole or just involve a couple of councillors. And then maybe towards the end of October, we look at a full consultation period early November.
Yeah, so the reason and you touched on, so the reason that I think it's important to go back to consultation on this is last time we did this exercise, Shamcook Bayside wasn't paying for this, and now they're paying for this debt. So I'm not saying that we wouldn't value, I'm not saying they didn't participate last time, but there might be a lot more engagement, the fact that now they've got a big deal of financials in behind it and the implications of the long-term community. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, the hybrid infill and steel pile was not something we discussed last time, was it? It was that hybrid option? I don't think that was ever shopped.
It might have been really fast, but it
Yeah.
was certainly there because we never came up with any new design options for this. We just pulled the design options that have been in previous reports over the last year and a half, 2 years, and just consolidated them for this discussion. And the wild card for all of this was really the construction, the schedule period. That was never a known, and so we did ask them to go and talk to contractors is their best way to do it, to find out at each of these options, what is your anticipation for completion? And so now that's kind of the missing piece throughout this whole process, and now we know what that looks like.
So
and just one other thing, Your Worship.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the public knows we've been trying to figure out a way to have access to the end of the wharf during this project. We haven't, without spending millions of dollars, to be honest, on additional, because you get the tides and it's such a long wharf, we haven't come up with anything internally. But if someone has a suggestion on how to provide access while the construction is going on, please let us know. If you've seen experience in others and stuff, and we can talk about it. But that was a question with CBCL we had early on. And we even talked at one point, but it's a cost prohibitive, was having a twin wharf, but it was like, that would take the project up to $10 million. And so we had to eliminate that fast. But because of the tides and stuff, it makes it hard even to bring in floating wharfs because, when the water's high, great. But as you know, when the tide is out, almost everything up to the pier head is exposed. So it just makes it a little bit trickier now to provide access. And then if you add in fuel trucks and all that stuff, it just becomes a question of how practically you can do it, especially for something that you're probably not going to use in the future, meaning if you provide this temporary access, even if we can find one for $500,000 or $600,000, then you're still going to, probably at the end of it, it's going to be just sold off or disposed, or if rented, given to someone else. But, we've talked about that in the past, and we just have not come up with a good solution on how to provide access while the construction's going on.
Is there an opportunity to have some type of, because I think of floating docks, I think of salmon cages with rails, and again, I get the tides are up and down, but that's but is there an option to have a partnership where you have a one season ferry where people, if they want to go whale watching, can, and there's a premium that year, right? There's got to be cost recovery, but if you want to get to the end of the wharf, it's X number or membership, and we have some type of private operator drive and dock at the wharf, so that way there's a connection. Maybe it goes from, bad examples, maybe it goes from the Bayside port and connects. I don't know, right? But there's got to be some type of viable option that doesn't completely wipe it out. And if it does, council's gonna have a big decision really weighing out short-term versus long-term, like the economic impacts of not having a viable wharf in this community. You gotta wonder what that dollar figure is like versus, find a creative solution. So, and again, I know it's not an easy thing and I'm not putting it on you, that's a we problem. But to not have a wharf for an entire season, that would be quite detrimental to the success of our community. Councilor Ware.
I just want to go back to the public consultation thing, and I understand there's been 2 or 3 years of public consultation on this, but Bayside and Shamcook is in excess of 30% of the population. They were not involved or invited to those consultations, but yet they're expected to pay 30% of the cost. So, to be fair, they have to be consulted with, and they have to have the opportunity to participate in the democratic process.
I think I'm making the assumption where I think we're going to be unified on that front, that there's due diligence with the new community that you got to make sure. And the truth is these costs are a lot higher than what they were last time we went through consultation. I think it's important to note in the public right now, because not everyone is privy to the information of what happened, but the town received a sum of money. We went through the consultation process, and then there was some things that we need to do in order to make the project a reality. And with COVID, the cost went through the roof. And what ended up happening is you have another couple $1 million while your funding partners are locked in at that certain amount. So what it forced us to do and what the delay has been is we've had to go back to our funding partners and ask for more money. So in order for the municipality not to be on the hook for the entire incremental amount that's gone up due to, call it inflation, or just, the costs around COVID, to be completely honest. So it kind of gets us back some degree to square one, which means that we have the opportunity to pick an option. But with that being said, consultation is important, but every year we hold on is a good reality that we might be back to square one and the costs are probably going to go through the roof again based on what we're seeing. And then we got to go back to our funding. It's a vicious cycle. So I can tell you from last time is there was no right or wrong answer. Some people in the public felt very highly about one option and then not so highly in the other, but we need to do consultation, but we also need to make a decision. And I think at this point, I think I'm going to say something that I believe should be explored, and I've discussed this with council and I have not done it publicly, is we have the biological station in St. Andrews with a wharf that is right now going through construction. So you have a wharf that is 100% federally, I should say construction, being replaced, hasn't started, but you have a wharf that is 100% federally funded. 100% federally funded. Our wharf used to be federally funded. When it burnt down, basically it was, if you want a wharf, we'll rebuild it, but then it's yours. My concern is, we might be able to get through the approach with the debt levels, but what's going to happen when the end needs are placed in 15 years and it's a substantial amount? This is doubling the debt of our community essentially. So what is going to happen when the end of the wharf needs are placed? Is this community able to afford it? We're not in a position where we can't have a wharf, but is there not an opportunity right now to talk to the federal government to say, why don't we have one super wharf together? They've already got a vessel down there, we're getting it by, and here's an opportunity for the federal government versus paying for one full wharf, and then every time we need money, they're paying a third of it, because every time we need money, we go to them and they give a third. They're paying for 1.3 wharves. Why are we not putting together one wharf and having a facility that actually we can all be proud of that has enhanced services? And you look at the old approach of the wharf, what's the opportunity there? Maybe it's replacing it, maybe it's leaving it there. What if it was shops where you could expand the downtown to have little kind of seaside shops along the wharf to enhance the shopping experience? There's such a big opportunity right now for the taxpayer of Canada to, instead of fund 1.3 wharfs, to have one, and for the taxpayer of St. Andrews that is essentially on the hook for a third of this. And this is not just a St. Andrews asset. It is enjoyed by the region. It is an economic driver for our province. And I'm just worried about the longevity. Sure, we could probably get through this time, But what happens when the end needs done, right? Like we need to look at the bigger picture here to make sure that this asset is sustainable for our community for the next 50 years. And although these life cycles are 50 years, that's just one section of our wharf. The end is going to be a substantial bill. So there's some bigger conversations, and unfortunately, we're tight for time, but I think they need to happen. So that's my little rant on concerns over the cost of the wharf. So I guess is there no further questions? I appreciate CBCL for being here and the long process this has been. But we're going to follow up. Pardon? Okay, we do have a question, actually. Councillor Neal.
Yeah, Chris, is it possible to put the presentation back up for a second?
Yep.
Just one of the pictures, option 3 photo or something along those lines. I'm just wondering if you could explain, I guess I don't fully understand exactly where the rise happens in Market Square. Like, are we actually planning to raise Market Square completely, or is it the raised rock wall transitioning from the existing level up to the wharf?
So the Market Square will be increased to 9.34, and this wharf as well, and then these last 3 spans of the wharf will be transitioning back down to the intermediate.
But his question is, where's the transitioning start? Just at the rock wall, or where the black is?
In here is where we start transitioning to the higher level. Where anything that's shaded gray is transitioning up to that 9.34 meter level.
Okay, thank you.
It goes without saying that transition is going to significantly alter the look of Market Square. Like, your view of the water is going to be, I'm not saying gone, but a meter rise is quite substantial when you're looking across it, right? So.
Oh, and it's sloping down and then going back up again?
Yeah, but we did have approval. We had to give the money back, if you remember, a few months ago, that support to raise the rest of the square, but it's a separate project. And so the long-term plan would be then to do a phase 2 of Market Square and bring the rest of it up to that level, more or less.
And despite the optics, that's not really an option for us. Like, if we don't rise that at some point, it's just all going to be gone anyway, right? So, yeah. Okay. Any other questions? I guess I should. Okay. Oh, Councilor Hurdle.
Since we have engineers here, I'll ask this question. For those folks who may not have been down this road before, it might be beneficial to ask the simple question of why can't it just be rebuilt or fixed the way that it does right now? I know that option 1 sort of deals with that, but not exactly. So I'll hand it over to you if you can explain for folks who maybe don't understand or see why we just can't have what we have now.
Well, if you build back what you have now, you get a much less anticipated design life. For one, with timber, once we get into timber structures, we're usually around the 25-year mark. Anticipated design life, now I know a lot of them go for a long time, but typically we kind of shy away from the timber options just because they don't provide much more of a design life than these other options with cast-in-place concrete and steel piles and like protecting the piles. They'll typically provide 50-plus years, especially like in concrete caissons and whatnot. They're more robust. So I think the timber options are, yeah, I guess you're not getting as much bang for your buck, I guess, in a way to say it, when it comes to design life. And also connections get, if I'm going into a rabbit hole here, but the connections start getting very difficult and more expensive, and the corrosion along and the rot and everything along with that. So I understand. I like the look of the timber wharves myself, but we're limited by design life.
Councilor Ware, and then we'll go to Councilor Heenan.
What type of timber are you looking at? Have you considered green hearts? And are they still available, I guess? I guess they are at a price.
Well, what we typically use, we usually call up both like Public Works and other wharves. If it's, say, timber cribs and stuff, we use Douglas fir and treated and everything like that. The treatment these days also doesn't hold up as well as the creosote that we can't use anymore either. So typically that's what we use. I think when it comes to piles, I don't want to be misquoted here, but I can't remember quite the species of the timber piles that we go after, that we use, and the treatment and everything. So.
Yeah, the green heart comes from South America, and it does have a life expectancy in excess of 50 years.
Oh, okay.
The ones at Bayside are now 64 years old. Now they're getting in rough shape, but they also have, 75,000 ton ships coming up against them. So,
Okay.
entirely different wear. But last time I priced them were $6,000 a piece. So
Yeah, it could get pretty
landed here.
expensive. Yeah, so, yeah, no, I personally don't have much experience when it comes to using that wood there. But yeah, if the price sounds kind of high.
Councillor Heenan?
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. First off, this has been very informative, and I do appreciate it. This is a question that's kind of loaded, but I will ask it. If you were living in this community with your family, and you were a taxpayer here, and you knew we needed a wharf, which option would you go with?
I feel I'm kind of biased to answer that question.
Oh,
I haven't looked
okay.
at everything.
But I'm just saying, it's like, we as a council have to rely on what people, like, we can have public consultation, and that is absolutely 100% needed. There's no question in my mind. But we have to look what's best value for the buck. And that's my problem. We have to look at the private sector that use the wharf. We have to look at the economics. We have to look at the time frame. We have to look at the viability. We have to look at the length of this wharf structure going to be sound. Because we have to face reality, or I feel we do, that if we don't do something, we may not have a wharf. And we've already got a weight restriction on it now, which will continue to decline. And so we have to really push on this. And as Mayor said, if we can come up with a partnership with the federal government, whatever. But the point is, we have to make sure that this town has a wharf. And we have to make sure that it's functional, because it's no use putting money into something that's not functional. And we have to make sure that it's environmentally, because that's what we have to do as a town. We have to make sure that it's the elevation meets the criteria, that we don't have to worry about it for 50, 100 years. So it's just that, like, I have an opinion which one I like, but that doesn't mean that's the one to go with. I'm not a timber fan, but anyway. I just wanted to put it out there and just say, what would you think? You don't have to answer it, but I just wanted to put it out there. Thank you.
For Councillor Harlan?
I'm just wondering about the lifespan of the end of the wharf. What are you anticipating the lifespan of that section would be?
I can't recall what the anticipated lifespan of the intermediate. You're talking the intermediate in the pier head?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't recall what the remaining life is on them. I know there's been some inspection reports done on them, but I can't recall right now. I'm not entirely sure when they were, I think, it was intermediate 50 or something? I'm not sure.
Yeah, the intermediate, as far as I remember, and BB's here, you may remember better than me, I think the intermediate portion was replaced during the, after the fire too, as well as the pier head. Yeah, so both replaced in the 90s. One reason we want to do this pile wrapping is to extend the life. That's the thing. Though they rot out, then it'll shorten it out. But if we get that done, that should give us another 40, 50 years.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, any other member of council? We had a second round of questioning there. All right, well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I know we have questions after the fact. I know we can reach out to you. So thank you very much for giving the presentation, but also for the public to be aware of some of the challenges. But I guess to go back to the question is, if you use a different term, call it value, for return on investment, there's no question the infill berm is the best all-around return for what you're paying, for what you're getting for life cycle. But then it doesn't take into consideration the cosmetics of the downtown, the look and feel of a heritage district. It doesn't take all that into account. And the other thing that I'm aware of doing the infill is
as much as I hate to say it, anyone that has erosion over the next 50 years for 2 miles on each side of that is going to point at that being the reason. And the other thing is, I think there'd be a valid argument to wonder what the environmental impacts would be of changing that dramatically with the current and everything else. So whether it be legit or not around erosion, I guarantee you the municipality would be blamed for everything along that coastline because they did that. That's just the way. If we even put in a sewer line, people on each side for kilometers say the reason the reason erosion's happening is because the sewer line was put down 2 blocks down. Like it's just being aware of the reality of what we are as a municipality. So there's no question, though, if you look at the pure math behind it, the infill berm with the life cycle, the cost, and the ability to add more onto it in the future is by far, if you look at dollars and cents and life cycle, the best option. But is it the best option? When we consulted the public last time, the public made it perfectly clear they did not like that look for our downtown. So that's the whole consideration of what we have to weigh in. So thank you very much for the presentation. I appreciate it. We're going to kind of at this point transition from presentation to a little bit of a discussion. Is that the goal tonight, Mr. Spear, or was that the gist of what you wanted to accomplish?
Yeah, I guess I'm looking for next step, Your Worship. So if consultation is what you're asking for, maybe there's not much sense. Feel free to get into discussion, but if you're really looking for the public input, maybe it's like other things, you'll want to get their input and to help you shape your final answers in a couple of months' time. Just so you know, it looks like we have until the end of 2026 to finish the project. So we're not on fire. Need to get this decided, although we are hoping to be able to start it next fall, but we've got time.
Yeah, as much as I don't want to delay it, the fact that we're a new community, unless someone feels different, we have to open up the consultation. And again, the numbers are completely different than what they were last time we did it. I think there was a way that we had kind of all the options up on boards. We had like an open house. People came in, people answered questions on it, and then they gave us we had a lot of feedback last time. So I think that's what this new council needs. I know the councillors in the wards, they need to talk to some of their residents to educate them, to let them know that this has major impacts. This is not a simple project. This is a multi-million-dollar project for a community of under 3,000 people. So it's got major implications. But I think we all know that the community needs a wharf, so that's not kind of a debate that we're looking at. It's just picking the right option. There's multiple options here, as we know, 5. They all should be looked at, and they all should be valued. They should be all evaluated. So if anyone else feels different, I think the next step would be to hear from the public on this versus us go too far down. And the other thing that's important to note, I referenced the new community. This actually was never debated by the current council, that the 6 councillors that were here before. As far as I know, the deputy mayor and myself are the only ones that are around this table here tonight that actually were part of the consultation last time. So that's why it's important for all of you to make a decision. Even if you're a new ward councillor or existing, it's important for you to be part of this process. And again, it's such a major step that I don't think we have an option other than to do it unless, again, council feels contrary, because I'm just one voice at the table.
So, Your Worship, if you like, as you know, I'm going to be out for a couple of weeks, so I won't be here in time to make a report for next meeting. I'll be here for the meeting. But if you like, well, for the first meeting in October, we'll present a plan for public consultation to be done between October and November to get it done as quickly as possible, and then can debate it in the new year.
I think that works. Yeah, when you get back, is probably as soon as possible. We should lay out that process and go from there. But that's more than fair. Anyone else have anything to add though on that one? I bet you didn't think it was going to be as quick tonight, did you? Okay, I'm going to jump back to the actual. And you're good, Mr. Spear? Okay. All right, so there is nothing under new business, which takes us to question period. Glad to have a number of people and a number of users at the wharf that are here, and some people like Mr. Chamberlain have experience here. Is there any questions from anyone? Is there anyone online, first of all, tonight, Mr. Spear? Should we maybe just do the question, ask them to raise their hand, and then we'll come back to them after we do the room?
I have a couple of questions online when you get a chance to, Your Worship.
Okay, sounds good. So if anyone is online and would like to ask a question, please raise their hand, and they will have an opportunity. And while we're waiting, Mr. Spear, you have some online. We might as well go through some of those.
So there's a question. To the whale watching businesses has a building in the area and it's not listed, or it's not shown. It's a high-level design. It wasn't purposely removed. It was just not included as they were putting this together at the last minute. So, these are just high-end conceptual drawings, not a final plan of the wharf.
But if it's the building I'm thinking about, that has to be a conversation that we have.
Absolutely.
As part of the consultation, we're gonna have to, and I know you put it in your report, that is one of the three main decisions this council's gonna have to make about the future of that particular location, whether it remains where it is or moves. But either way, from this construction, I think it's safe to assume that building is gonna have to move during the infill period either way, right? We knew that
Correct.
from last.
And the ownership is aware of that at least during the
Yeah.
construction period, it would have to be moved. A question about the environmental impact study. So it's a mixed answer on that, meaning we went through the province for the environmental impacts assessment, and they deem it as the rock infill one, so kind of the most extreme example. And they said it's just a replacement, and so they didn't require a full EIA. All they required was to do an assessment of barn swallows to see if there's any living underneath the wharf and along the shoreline. And so that was all that was required, which we completed, and to date, they've given their A-OK. That hasn't been worked in the projections. As you know, a full EIA can get extremely expensive, but that's up to council and depending on the way they take. There was, I'll just mention, there's also a period for Indigenous consultation, which we did complete, and that process is complete, and they're happy to continue. And there's a question, is the wharf considered a heritage property? I don't think it's listed. I'm not saying it isn't. I just don't think it's listed under the Heritage Register formally. So that's off the top of my head response, but I'll get back to Ms. Kohler, who's on our Heritage Board, and investigate that a little deeper, if it's been officially designated or not. But at the top of my head, without digging into the records, I don't think it is. But I could stand to be corrected if anyone else knows.
Yeah, thank you. And I think just back on the environmental assessment, I think if we were to pick the infill berm option, that whole debate would be a lot more of a conversation. I'm not saying that it's not relevant for the others, but that is a significant change in the pattern. So that one in particular would be something that would be debated as part of that one. I'm not saying it won't be the others, but that option it certainly would be. But I think we'd be getting ahead of ourselves to debate that at this time. Absolutely.
So, Chris, you said there was a business consultation process that has happened already, that took place earlier in the discussions?
Sorry, a consultation with users?
Businesses, yeah.
No, it's just in general. So I was saying that it would probably be good to have a stakeholder engagement. So
Okay,
the last
sorry,
couple
I
of three
misheard
times,
you.
we've just done full rooms, but it can get pretty hectic. We had big crowds, 75 to 100 people. So if you can bring along the businesses, and certainly the users of the wharf would be the most affected. So it'd be easier, and not a lot of people want to get up in a public presentation and make statements. So if you had smaller groups, you could go and just talk about the reality and get their input. You'd probably get a better discussion, in my
Great.
opinion.
Thank you.
In the last consultation period, there was definitely a high percentage of, we'll call it, wharf users that participated, provided feedback. Even the number of members of the yacht club provided letters and things. There was a lot of engagement for the people that use it.
So was there ever a report done, or was that information consolidated for I guess all of the councillors except for the mayor and the deputy mayor? Like, do we have access to those previous records?
Well, I sent out a report about a month and a half ago that had all the
That included all of that?
well, the highlights of all of it. When I say the highlights, there'd be, I'm not kidding, probably a couple of bankers full of reports we've done over a few years, but I've taken these options that we've been discussed over the last 2 or 3 years and gave you kind of the update of where we are right now.
But the letters and things like that could be pulled. They were all kind of consolidated in a council package. It was a thick one.
I'm sure.
But yes, all those old like those letters people wrote before, they'd still be all on file.
100%, yeah.
So those are all accessible.
Sorry, and I misunderstood your question. So if you want copies of those letters, they're certainly available.
Okay. That's it for online. Anyone in the room have any questions that they'd like to ask? It's a good time because CBCL's in the room too, so I'll put you back on the hot seat. But yeah, come on out. Come right up to the mic so people can hear you online to hear the question.
Hey, it's just something that popped into my head when I was listening to you. Oh, yeah, my name's Tyler Doherty. Just a question that popped in my head when I heard you speaking. You said you received funding for the project, for the whole project. How much was received and how much is left of that money?
Well, so the whole project is 7.8 million, and the numbers in front of me, it's about a 70-30 split.
Okay.
More or less, and just about all of it, because all we put is a little bit of design to get to this point.
Okay, because I know it's been a long time, right? I didn't know if there was money constantly going out of that for different services, that, you know what I mean?
No. Sorry, for those online, I didn't turn on my mic. So the approval we actually got this week, the final confirmation for the additional funding is about 7.8 million. You know, for what we've paid out in fees to CBCL is under $50,000, I think. It's just because we keep doing these reports. And so it's a 70-30 split. So the town, I think, we borrowed, on the top of my head, I think it was about 1.3 million that we have to borrow to pay for it. We're going to take some out of tax funds and reserves, and then the rest is coming from our granting partners.
Thanks.
Just on top of that, what we can use that 70% of funds on is very, very limited. We couldn't put that into general operation or anything like that. It is very restricted to what that percentage of funds can be used for.
Yeah, I mean, they basically took a look at what we proposed and said it's for this, we had to take wharf measurements, how much it's going to expand, so it's really rehabilitating what's there right now or replacing with these options that are before you.
Perfect. Any other questions? Mr. Chamberlain, come on up.
Thank you, Your Worship. B.B. Chamberlain, the ex-Wharfinger, or past Wharfinger, whichever way you want to put it. Two things that I was thinking of while the presentation was on. One would be if the wharf is sided with rocks, you might want to think of liability. As you know, some of you know, I sit down the point quite a bit, and the number of kids and parents who walk those rocks. I've never seen anybody fall, but the possibility is there. And the other item is, further to what you were speaking on, Your Worship, is a couple years ago, more than a couple, we had dredging done. Inside of 2 years, that was completely refilled. That's how fast it happens. The only thing we accomplished in doing was cleaning all the wire rope and everything else out of the bottom. But once that was gone, there was nothing to catch the silt, and the silt flew down very easily. Just a point. Thank you.
Absolutely. And to add on to that, some of the public feedback last time is they do a lot of repairs at the end of the wharf, and if you put the rock there, it's not possible. Access to the beach was a concern if you do all rock across the front. Other things that hurt is when you look at the tides and how dramatic they are, think of all the things that can get caught up in the rocks and the smell associated with it, with the rock. So there was a lot of feedback on why the rock option might not be the superior, and I use the rock we'll call it the infill berm. But yeah, those are all valid points, and certainly appreciate them. Anyone else? All right. Well, at any time, you're certainly welcome to ask a counselor or write in. So appreciate everyone for being here. Counselor, Deputy Mayor comments, anything from anyone today? Okay. You almost feel like you guys had just met very recently. I will save everyone from any more comments since I already did my rant. And there's no need to go to closed session this evening, obviously. So I'll be looking at 7:31 p.m. Motion to adjourn. I've got Deputy Mayor Akaji and seconded by Councillor Hurl. Won that one, Councillor Heenan. All in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye. Aye. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Sorry for being a little late.